button on. And I'm going to share my screen now. All right, you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. So this is Sarai SketchUp model. So thank you, Sarai, for volunteering your model to use as an example. So I mean, obviously, you guys all been working on SketchUp Web, right? One of the first things that I want to kind of go over today, as soon as I can get this little thing out of the way. Hold on, there's a little go-to bar I can't move. There we go. Okay, so one of the things that I learned using SketchUp. So obviously I use the pro version of this, which is a standalone application on my computer, and it looks slightly different than this, so with a little bit more features. But one of the things that I learned kind of going through this exercise, preparing for this presentation, was that there are actual layers tool in SketchUp. It's just called tags. So usually I know it by layers, but in this version they're calling it tags. So what tags are, or I'll call them layers, just so it makes it easier, is you can categorize the things that you model into different, let's call them tags, just so it's not confusing, into different tags, and then you can actually turn on and off those things. So I'll give you guys an example, right? So Sarai has her living room modeled out, and one thing that I noticed about Sarai's model is that there's a couple of things that are happening when you model and not group things, right? So one of the things that happens is if I wanna put this TV or furniture piece into a group, it's kind of hard right now because when I double click or triple click into it, it also selects the walls. So that tells me that that model and that model are stuck together right now. So one thing that you can do to try to fix that is if there's a way for you to kind of select just the objects from left to right. So if I go, like if I drag a box from left to right and kind of get that object, um, and you right click and make it a group, now you can actually just select, the TV and the furniture piece without actually selecting the rest of the walls. So being aware when you model and making things into a group once you're done modeling is going to make your life a lot easier. Uh, so let me show you how tags work, right? So let's say that I wanted to control the visibility of this TV console and the TV with a tag. So what I could do is add a tag and call it TV console, right? And then I'm going to go to my, I think it's called the entity info, which is this icon. I'm going to make this a little bigger for the screen. This icon on the top. And when you select your component or your group, it's asking you what's the current tag that you want it to be in. And so what you're going to do is you're going to select the TV console. So now this group is tied into the TV console tag. So if I come over here, and let me close that entity info so it doesn't get confusing. So if I open up the tags again, here they are, in case you didn't realize that in the beginning. I have the TV console tag. You see this little eyeball? That means that it's on. So if I click on it and turn it off, it hides the TV console. And I'll tell you guys why that's important right now. Because a lot of you have been modeling inside bedrooms or living rooms with the walls turned on, right? So what it means is a lot of you have to kind of go in here and get inside the space and then start moving these things, which sometimes, you're trying to move this little corner and look, you rotate and you're behind the wall all of a sudden, or the wall is getting in the way of your view, right? So what you can do is select all your walls. If you haven't already made them into a group, make them into a group, and then just make a new tag and call it walls, right? So again, to change right now, this is not, it's untagged, right? So I have to go to the entity icon over here. After I select it, it's telling me I selected one group and the tag that I want it to be in is walls. So now I can turn off walls, right? And in this case, Sarai doesn't have a floor, so it kind of looks like things are floating around, but we can fix that by modeling a floor real quick. I'm just gonna model a quick surface down there. And again, every time I model something, I'm going to make it a group. So now if I turn off those walls again, see, now I can kind of model a little bit more freely in the interior space, and it's easier to navigate and whatnot. So that was a quick little intro on the tags. And I know I told you guys I'm going to teach you Illustrator, and I am. Don't worry, I'm going to get to that in a minute. I just kind of wanted to go over this really quickly. Um, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually use a background image of your SketchUp model to work in Illustrator. So the next thing that I want to teach you really quick is how to use scenes. And some of you might have already been using these, right? So if you go again into your right toolbar over here, there's a little one of these things that movie producers use to say camera action, lights, camera action. So that's called the scenes properties. Um, and what we're going to do is we're going to create an axonometric image of your model. We're going to export the image out, and we're going to take it into Illustrator and then create a diagram out of it. So what I want to do here is I want to create a orthographic axonometric. So first, let's turn on our walls back on, and let's pick the view that we like. So I'll take the tags out of the way. So we have the scenes. Um, so there's two ways of visualizing the model in SketchUp. One of them is called perspective, and the other one is parallel projection. So parallel projection, what it does is it turns all your vertical lines, it makes them go straight up and down on the screen, right? So it looks a little different. Watch. It looks a little bit distorted, but this is a way of kind of like um, emphasizing which walls are perpendicular and which walls are parallel. So as you can see, every single vertical line in the screen goes straight up and down, right? Whereas in perpendicular, you can kind of see the lines tilting outwards a little bit. So even though this looks a little bit more three-dimensional and natural, you can kind of see your walls are tilting out and inwards depending on the angle that you're viewing it at. So for this exercise, we want it to be an orthographic parallel projection, which is this icon here. So let me show you once again. Um, Let me move this out of the way. So you bring out your scenes by clicking on this icon, and then you're going to find this icon that's called parallel projection, turn it on, and then you're just basically going to center your model on the view. So bear with me, there's a couple of times where my model is saving, so it freezes up. So we're gonna just want to center it on the view right here and kind of orbit a little bit so we can see a little bit from above, and we can get a good view into the model, right? So you kind of want to be 45 degrees above. So this is a little too low and that's a little too high. You kind of want to find the sweet spot where you're kind of like the 45 degrees angle. So right about there. And for this intents and purposes, I'm gonna hide all of the walls that are in the front of the camera. So I'm gonna go into my walls. I'm gonna select that wall. In 1 second. There we go. I'm gonna make it a group and I'm gonna hide it. So you'll notice that after I hit it, so what I did is I clicked H on my keyboard, but you can also hide by going right clicking and say hide. So if it's not hidden already, you can say hide. And you'll notice that right now it looks like it kind of left like the ghost version of it right there. And what that's telling you is that there's a hidden object in there. And we want to not show that hidden object. So we're going to go into the styles, actually into these little glass icon, which I think is called visibility or something like that, display. And we're going to tell it to not view hidden objects. So we're going to uncheck that. See? So now you don't see it. If you want to turn it back on, you can turn it back on later. So this is useful for when you hide a lot of things and you forget what you hid. You can just kind of click this, and again it'll show you all the hidden objects, kind of like in this dash ghosted version. So
Hey Ricky,
yeah,
could you describe what the hidden objects are that it's recognizing?
yeah, like what that is.
Yeah, what's causing it to do that?
So basically, Sarai had modeled a wall on her that she kind of put like some artwork or some pictures in there. Um, Is that what you're referring to, Kevin, or why it's actually visualizing in a different way?
No, that's it. Like, how if students had the same error message pop up, how would they know? Is it a picture that's causing it, or yeah,
Oh, no,
is
no,
it?
no.
I guess.
It always does that. It always does that.
Oh,
By default, this is not checked on your models. So if you go and hide something, like let's say I go and hide the whole model, and so you see it basically just disappears. But if you have this on, it'll tell you that there's a hidden object there. That's just the default display that all hidden objects are shown when this is checked on.
okay, I
Yeah.
see.
So
It's
it's
just
not
a dis
really, yeah, it's not an error. It's just that's the way SketchUp visualizes it. So
okay. It's
you don't
just a
want
display.
exactly.
Got it.
So let's unhide it, and let's unhide everything. And we just want to hide this wall right here, right? And turn that off so that you don't see it. I also don't want to see my axes. So these guys, I don't want to see those. So I'm going to turn those off. So again, let's find the perfect spot for our image. You can rotate it a little bit, or you can kind of have it like centered right there. It's up to you guys. So I want to go right there, right there. And what I want to do is I want to make a new scene. So I'm going to go to my scenes tab. So I'll do that again. It's this little icon, the lights, camera, action icon. That's what I like to call it. And then we're just going to hit plus sign right here. So I'm going to do a plus sign, and you can ignore this. Just say OK. And in a second, you'll see the new scene turn on right here. There you go. So now you have that scene, right? So check out what happens. So anytime I save a scene, basically what it's telling the SketchUp is like, I want this view to be saved. So if I go over here and I switch around, or I even change the view to perspective, I can always click on the scene and it'll take me back to the scene that I saved as I saved it. So that's all we're going to do in SketchUp today. What I'm going to do is now I'm just going to export an image. So I'm going to go up here to the top left to these little three bars, which is kind of like your home menu. And I'm going to export a PNG, right? And it's going to ask me, what do you want to export? And this is fine. I'll just export that. But I'm going to tell it that I want a transparent background. So I don't want that gray background. I just want white or transparent. And so now I'm going to export as a PNG and hit continue. And it'll probably take a couple of seconds because this model's a little heavy with all the furniture. And then it's going to ask you, where do you want to save it? I'm just going to save this into the desktop. And I'm going to call it Sarai's living room. Okay, so that's all I want to show you guys in SketchUp, and now we're going to move on to Illustrator. So let me move Illustrator into the window. So this is so I have Illustrator installed on my computer, and it's installed by a program called Creative Cloud, which I'm working on getting you guys all access. So can any of the students tell me what kind of computers do you guys use at home? And are they your personal computers or are they school computers? So anybody can answer that.
I'm using the school computer. It's the Acer Chromebook.
So it's an Acer Chromebook. Are you able to install apps?
No, I can't find like the App Store, the website. No.
So it's basically
I can't
just,
think.
sorry. Oh, somebody's unmuted. Um, so basically you guys can't install anything on it, right? It's just like whatever's already installed by your school.
Um, mm, what's the software called again?
It's called Creative Cloud. So if you install Creative Cloud, you'll be able to install Illustrator, Photoshop, and Design, all those Adobe products. So I'm trying to
I
figure
think
out
I'm
if you
able to
guys,
download it.
yeah?
Yep.
Okay, Galilee, why don't you can be our guinea pig and try to download it either during or after the session. I prefer after so you can pay attention. And then,
Okay.
we'll figure it out if I can get you guys licenses, which I'm going to borrow for some of my coworkers so that you can work on Illustrator and try it out too. Okay. So for now, just kind of like pay attention to what I'm doing, and you'll get an opportunity to do this yourself as well. So this is just kind of like a first run, so you guys can do it on your own. So this is what Illustrator looks like when you open it. And so what we want to do is we just want to create a new document. So you can either go to File, New, from Template, or just Create New. And we're going to do it on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. So we're going to do Print, and we're just going to find Letter, and we're going to do it Landscape. So there's a lot of settings. Don't worry about all of those right now. Just kind of, go. And if you forget this, I'm going to upload the video to YouTube so you can see. So there you go. It created an 8.5 by 11. In an Illustrator, these are called artboards. So now I'm going to reference the PDF that I sent you guys earlier. And I'm going to use this as a guide to teach you Illustrator. So I wanted to do this because then you're also able to go back to the guide and kind of like review things that you can do, or that I'm teaching you here. So this is a beginner's guide to Illustrator, and it has different sections, and it has different things called episodes, which are little like mini lessons. And I'm just going to kind of go through the first 10 episodes and teach you guys all of those little things, right? So the first section is the Introduction to Adobe Illustrator Interface. So we're not actually going to watch the video. I'm just going to kind of go through this this is going to be my my guide to kind of teach you things. So first, let's go over the tool panels and the control panel, the document area, and the workspace panels, right? So you can kind of see here in Illustrator that I have my tool panels here, which you'll see all these kind of icons. So again, very similar to SketchUp, you have all your tool panels here, and then you have your properties panel on the right. So anytime you create an object in Illustrator, it'll give you different properties that you can change here. And I know this looks a little daunting because there's a lot of buttons and a lot of settings, but if you just focus on the ones that I'm teaching you and I want you to learn, that's all we have to take care of today, okay? So don't get scared. It's going to be fine. So the first thing that I want to do before we even start doing anything in Illustrator is I want to drop in my image that I exported from SketchUp, right? So I'm going to go to File, Place, and I'm going to find Sarai's living room from SketchUp. So now it's asking me, where do you want to drop it off? So I'm going to just click and drag and make the rectangle and just kind of fill up the page. There you go. So you can see that it dropped it in. And I don't need any of this stuff over here on the right. So I'm just going to kind of, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. And I'm going to hold shift as I do that so that it enlarges it proportionally. If I don't hold shift, I can enlarge it and kind of like take it out of whack. So you see it got stretched out a little bit. So I'm just going to hit Control Z and do that again. So I'm going to hold shift as I drag. And now I have Sarai's living room in here, okay? So, so that was step one. So let's go back and see what's step two. Panels and workspaces, we're not going to go over that. Artboards in Adobe Illustrator. So the artboard, we're only going to be working with one artboard today, and that's the 8.5 and 11 artboard that we did. But in Illustrator, you do have the capacity to do multiple artboards. And the way that you do that is on your properties, you can do edit artboards and artboard options here. Sorry, it wasn't artboard options. It's actually under artboards, you can hit this plus sign right here, and it'll start adding, as many artboards as you want. So now I have 4 artboards, but let's say I don't need those 4 artboards. I only need 3, so I can go to edit artboards. I can just click on any artboard and hit delete, delete, delete. So like I said, this is if you're a little bit more advanced and you're doing multiple documents at the same time. We're only focusing on one today, so that's not an issue. So let's see what episode 4 is about. So vectors. This is an important lesson about why we're using Illustrator. So I'm going to drop a quick little image onto the board, and we're going to explain what Illustrator does and why it's different than other softwares, right? So I'm going to resize my little guy right here. So first of all, does anybody know what the difference between a raster and a vector is? Okay, so I'll teach you guys. So if you ever download an image from the internet, like a picture, a photo, or anything, typically anything that you download from the internet as an image, even an Instagram picture or a photo of yourself, those are typically raster images. So if you've ever noticed, when you zoom in a little too close to an image, it begins to get pixelized. The reason it's doing that is because it's been flattened from whatever created it, whether it was your iPhone camera or you created it in another software. It's been turned into a raster image, which means that it's defined by pixels, right? So if I go in here, the headphone on this dog is designed by these little blue pixels that kind of start to gradate into black to give them that soft little look. And the shadow here is made up of these pixels that are that kind of define the shadow. So that's a raster image. What Illustrator does is it works with vectors, and vectors, what they are is they're mathematically defined geometries that never pixelate. So you can zoom in into them indefinitely. So I mean, I can zoom into this picture, but this picture is a raster image of a vector, so it'll still pixelate. But let me create a little eyeball. I'll recreate a little eyeball with actual Illustrator, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So now you see this is a vector. So look what happens as I zoom into it. You see the image of what's supposedly a vector, which is actually a raster. It pixelates, but I can zoom into this indefinitely and it'll never pixelate. It's always because it's defined by that, right? So if I export my image that I do in Illustrator as a PDF, it'll retain those properties. So if you've ever gotten a PDF document like the homeworks that I send out, you can zoom into those indefinitely, and the letters will always be sharp, right? And so that's what differentiates a raster versus a vector. So anything you do in Illustrator will always be a vector, unless of course you're importing a raster image. So this image that we exported from SketchUp is a raster image, and you can tell because as you zoom in, you'll start seeing the pixelation, right? So that's the quick little lesson on raster versus vector. I'm not going to go over all these tools because I'll show you guys once I'm using them. But I am going to go into strokes and fills, and I'll do that in a second. I'll go into colors, and I'll go into zooming in and using guides, maybe not guides today. I'm going to go into making shapes and different types of shapes, and then I'm going to do how to like use a shape builder tool, which is like when you have multiple shapes and how do you combine them. And then I'm going to show you how to use a pen tool, and we're not going to go into episode 11. So that was it. I'm going to show you all those topics right now during this session. So one of the things that I want to do with this image is I want to kind of give it like a diagrammatic feel. And the first thing that I noticed about this is that the line work came out a little too thick for my liking. So I'm going to go back really quickly to SketchUp Web App, and I'm going to re-export that with a higher definition so that the line work is a little bit finer. So instead of 800, let's do 2000 pixels by 4000 pixels. Let's see if we can do, maybe let's do even a little higher, 3000 pixels by 4200. There we go. So I'm going to export that. Does anybody have any questions so far or anything that doesn't make sense? So everything that I'm going to be doing from now and moving forward, including exporting this image, is something that you guys are also going to do, okay? So if you're not paying attention right now, you're going to have to come back and look at the video at some point to learn how to do this. So it's exporting. I'm going to hit wait. This one's taking a little while longer because it's a lot, the resolution's higher. So I think that's what's happening. I'll just wait for it to appear over here. Oh, and I forgot to make it transparent. That's okay. So now this is a good opportunity to show you another way to drop images into the artboard. So another way you can do it is to simply bring your folder over Illustrator, and then you're going to find your file, which is here at the bottom, and just drag it into it. So what that's going to do is it's going to drop it in as its full resolution. And so what we want to do is we want to scale it down to the artboard, right? So remember, as you drag one of these corners, hold shift, and let's just fill up that page. So one thing that I want to do is I want to get rid of this extra right side of the image. So I'm going to click on the image, and I'm over here under properties. I'm going to go into crop image, right? And I'm just going to crop the image to what I actually need. So I'm going to come in close to that. And after I'm done selecting that, I'm just going to hit apply. So you can see that it crops it. So the next thing I'm going to show you how to use is the pen tool. So before we get to the pen tool, actually, let's play around with layers. So layers are very important in Illustrator because they determine in what order you see things. So we want to always have our image as the bottom layer. So I always call that background. Oh, I can't type today. And then I'm going to create a new layer on top of that. So now that I have this layer defined, I'm going to lock it. So the way you lock it is when you have your layers here, there's a little object here, a little box. And if you click on that, it'll lock it. So I can no longer select that background image. And now I just want to work on layer 2, right? So let's use the pen tool. So I'm going to click on the pen tool, which is up here. Also P on your keyboard. And I'm going to start drawing. So let me just do a few clicks with the pen tool and show you what it's doing. So the pen tool is basically just creating a shape, and it's filling it with a color. And the way you can tell what color it is these two colors right here. So in Illustrator, you have two different colors, right? You're always going to have your what is called your fill, which is the inside of the shape. So whatever color that is on here, that's your fill. You can always change that to whatever you want. And you also have a stroke. So a stroke is the outline of your shape. So right now you see that it's white with this little red line. That means there's no stroke visible. So if you want a stroke, you have to actually come in here and select a color. So I'm going to select black. And right now there's still no stroke because I haven't defined what the stroke is. So when I click on my object under properties again, there's a stroke little button right here, and you can start just kind of like going up. And you can see right now that the stroke is white, but I actually want to be black. So you see how I have a black stroke with a pink fill. So I can play around with how thick I want that stroke to be, right? So let's just say I want it to be 2. So I'm going to leave that object off to the side, and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to create the same thing that I did, but around the extents of my object, right? So I'm going to grab the pen tool again, and this time it remembers that I want that pink fill, the black stroke, and I want it to be 2 points thick, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to zoom in. And the way you zoom in Illustrator is just hold Alt, and with the scroll wheel on your mouse, you can just go in and out, right? So I'm going to zoom in to these points, and I'm going to click here on the corner, and then I'm going to go up to this corner, and I'm going to click there, just in the middle of that line, and I'm going to just go all the way around my object, just being careful that I go. So if I want to pan instead of zooming in, I just hold spacebar, and it gives me this little hand, and then I can just click and drag to where I want it to go, right? So now I'm going to go to that object, that corner, and you can always fix these points later if you messed up. And that corner, that corner, that corner. And once you're done all the way around, you just click on the first point that you started, and you see how a little, I don't know if you guys can see on your screen, but there's a little tiny circle that appears as soon as I hover over that, and that means that you're closing the loop, right? After that, you'll stop using your pen. So you can kind of see here that I did this fill with a 2-point stroke around my object, but what I really want is I actually still want to see my object. So I'm going to come here and under the fill, I'm going to select it. So when you select it, it brings it to the front. And I'm just going to click on this little icon, which is none, which is that symbol. And I'm going to remove the fill by clicking on none. All right, so once again, none. And so now what it did is it just created, right now I have a stroke that looks very close. And this is the reason I wanted the SketchUp lines to be a little thinner. I wanted to put a stroke around this thing so it makes it look a little bit more diagrammatic. So I'm going to go here and I'm just going to increase the stroke a little bit more to like 6, right? So now I have this thick, bold stroke around my object. And what I want to do next is I want to have a few text labels on my page so I can kind of describe what different things and different materials are. So I want to leave a little bit of white space around the object so I can put those descriptions. So I'm going to have to go back to my layer and unlock the background image so that I can now select it and select the stroke as well. So the same way as in SketchUp, to select multiple items, you have to hold down Shift and you can then click on different things. And you can kind of see like when you select something, it tells you the color of the layer because it turns blue. So it's on the background layer. And if I select this or hover over the stroke, it's pink, which is the layer 2. Or I can just kind of select both of them at the same time by going left to right. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to basically drag this corner, hold Shift so I can make it a little bit smaller. And I'm just going to move it off to the side. And now I have a little bit of white space to create some text, arrows, and leaders. So it'll look like a little bit more of an architectural diagram. So the first thing that I want to do with Sara E's model is I want to call out her couch, right? So what I'm going to do is now is I'm going to use a pen tool again. And this time I'm going to start by clicking in her couch. And then my next click is going to be a little bit of a diagonal line. So like about a 45 or 30-degree line. So somewhere around here. Click. And then I'm just going to go straight to the left. And you can kind of see when you're making a straight line, it gives you that pink guideline. So I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see that pink guideline a little bit better. Right? And I'm just going to click one more time. So I don't actually want the fill. I just want the stroke again. So now I'm going to go to having that object selected. I'm going to select the fill and take it off. And I'm going to go to the stroke and give it a 1-point stroke, right? Oh, I don't want to quit. Oh no. Sorry guys, I think my Illustrator crashed for some reason. Are you guys still with me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Good to know that I didn't crash out of the meeting. Let me just bring Illustrator up again, and I'll do that really quick just to bring it back into where we were. So while we're waiting for Illustrator to load up, does anybody have any questions or anything, any comments at all? Or want me to repeat something or go over something again? Let me know if I'm going too fast or slow. It's going to take a couple of minutes just to bring Illustrator back up. So while we wait for that, I'm going to show you guys kind of like something that I've been working on. A little, this is for work actually. Let me see if I can bring it up. And I'm doing the same thing at work that I'm having you guys do. So I'll show you what kind of like the finished product looks like, or would like for it to look like. Although I am a professional and you know, I don't expect you guys to get to this level, but I'm opening up my email here in the background, and I'll have it open in a few seconds. Just bear with me, give me a minute. All right. So this is kind of what I want you guys to get to, right? So I did all of this in SketchUp. So this is a model that I did in SketchUp. So you can kind of see the walls here. I brought all this in from the 3D warehouse, and then I rendered it. So what you guys saw me doing in Illustrator right now is just a straight screenshot from SketchUp. But when I do presentations, I like to render mine a little bit. So I use this program called Enscape. So it kind of gives it a little bit more of a realistic light bounce. So you can kind of like, you know, like the SketchUp models and the textures kind of look a little more realistic. The glass has like a reflection. You know, like the tiles have a little bit of reflectivity. So it just gives it a little bit more of a polish, right? So this is a model that I rendered, brought into Illustrator. I put it in a presentation so I can present this to the client. You know, I have a reference of a plan, the architectural plan here, to show the client what section of the room I'm describing. And what we wanted to show here was, you know, we're trying to add this like exterior balcony to this apartment unit, and we were trying to convince the client to see if they thought that was a good idea. So I did a series of diagrams where you talk about, you know, uh, how do you have window access into that balcony? Do you have a window frame, or do you just have a opening, straight opening? So these are the types of diagrams that I kind of create my day-to-day to describe my work to the clients. And so that's one of the things that I kind of want to use to teach you guys about Illustrator. So what I am going to teach you right now is how to get that bold outline around your image, and how to put labels in this fashion. Just to create a quick diagram presentation, and then we'll add this to your portfolio once you're done with it, and hopefully you can keep polishing it up as we move forward. But so sorry that my email crashed, my Illustrator crashed. Let me just log back in here. And for some reason, I'm really bad at spelling today. My fingers are like frozen. Okay, so I'm logged back in. Gonna recreate all this that I did. Hopefully Illustrator doesn't crash again.
One thing that I learned doing anything, whether it's Illustrator or Photoshop, you have to save every like 5 minutes.
That
Because
is,
Illustrator crashes on me too. And
yep.
when a weird menu pops up, or if I click in one place but then my mouse goes another place, I know something's freezing. So you quickly just save and then keep going and hope nothing weird happens again.
Yes, absolutely. That is a great lesson. Uh, I mean, I'm sure you guys you have run into this when you're writing documents on your homework, Word docs or something like that. I don't know. It's happened to me so many times where I lose hours of work because I forgot to save. So a great point. Always save. So we're gonna save as to start with, and I'm gonna call it ACE sample. So let me recreate everything that I told you guys really quickly. So and we're gonna work with this one. It's fine. So scaling it down a little bit. I'm going to show you guys how to mask it this time instead of cropping it. So when you crop it, you actually change the extent of the image. When you mask it, you're just kind of hiding. You're kind of creating like a mask over it. So let me show you what a mask does. So once you hit mask, you can kind of take these grips and move them where you want it to not show. So now, I don't know if you guys noticed, but as soon as I move the mask away from the SketchUp logo, you don't see it now anymore because it's hidden behind that mask. But the image is still there. You can see the frame. So if you ever need to change your mask, you can kind of go in here and still it's right there, right? When you crop something, you're actually like cutting it, almost like you're cutting in real life. So you lose what you cut. So sometimes it's better to just have a clipping mask, right? So actually I'm moving the background here inside the mask. Anyways, let's proceed. So let me quickly put that stroke around the object, and I'm going to do that really fast here. So a little bit quicker and a little looser this time. So you can see this time I'm not actually, it's not giving me a visual because right now my stroke is not showing. So I'm going to close my loop and I have it selected. So I'm just going to increase the stroke to, let's do like 4 points. And this time I'm going to make it like a hot pink, just so it looks a little visually appealing or different. So again, to change the color, you just double click into this item and it brings up this like color spectrum. So first you kind of choose the color that you're thinking of. So if you're thinking of like a green, you bring it to the green. If you want more like a green blue, you can drag this in between, and then you can change how the hue of the color, whether you want it very saturated and bright or a little bit more dull or darker, so you can kind of play around with the color here, whatever you want. So for now I'm going to do like a really bright hot pink. So there we go. And I'm going to keep all that in one layer, and I'm just going to create a new layer above that. That's going to be my text. So again, I'm going to do a pen tool, and I'm going to quickly save in case this crashes again. So I just hit Control S. You can see that it saved it there. I'm going to do my pen tool, and I'm going to call out, this time I'm going to call out, yeah, the couch. So again, I did just a few clicks, and you can see that every time I'm making a stroke, it's not showing it because I'm not defining it. But the stroke is there, the object is there, the path is there, so I can click on it and then just give it a stroke, right? This time I'm going to do a 1 point stroke, but this time I want it to be black. So I'm going to have it selected. I'm just going to change this color to, I'm going to show only web colors, and I'm just going to click black, right? So now I have this arrow kind of pointing into it. And what I want it to be is actually, I want it to be an arrow because I'm pointing to that couch, right? So I'm going to select it. And over here under stroke, I'm going to click on the stroke word itself. And so what it does is it brings like a sub menu of even more options. So, I can see why this might be a little overwhelming, but don't worry about everything. We're just going to focus on the things that matter to us. And so we're going to put an arrowhead at the end of this guy. So we're going to come here to arrowhead and just pick like a nice arrowhead. And I like these, like this one, like arrow 9. And you can see that I put it right there. And if you want the arrowhead to be bigger, you can always play with the scale. So I can go up to like 150% or something like that. And that makes it a little bit bigger, right? And let's say that you want to move that arrowhead. So here's another important thing in Illustrator. The selection tool in the Illustrator, this guy, the one with the black, is going to select the entire object, right? But remember, when we created this object, we made it by actually clicking on 3 points, right? 1 point, 2 point, 3 points. So if I wanted to select the sub objects or those points, I'm going to use this little selection tool, which is called the direct selection tool, and it looks white. So if I click on that, now I can select on, the anchor, which this is what these little breaks are called. So if I want to move, for example, that anchor, I just click on it once. And then after it's selected, I can drag it to wherever I want, right? So I can modify that vector arrow. And the reason I want to modify is I just want to put it in the middle of this couch pad so you can actually see the entire arrowhead, which is not important, but just something that I wanted to show you guys. And then next we're going to put a little label. So now I'm going to use a text tool. So this is a type tool. and I'm going to create just a frame. So I'm going to make my frame. And then it puts, for some reason, it puts all this like sample text in there, which you can just ignore and start typing. So I'm going to call it sectional sofa. Actually, I'm going to do it in all caps so it looks a little more architectural. Sectional sofa, right? And with like everything in Illustrator, whenever you create anything and you click on it, it'll give you the properties over here, right? So it'll give you like the basic properties. So it's depending on what object you choose. So if I'm choosing text, it'll give me properties for text, right? So I can choose the font here, which I'm just going to leave as is, but I am going to make it a little bit bigger so it's a little bit more visible on the screen. So let's go to like 24 points screen. And I'm just going to take that text and I'm going to put it here. And I want that the beginning of that line to kind of be more over here. So again, I'm going to go to the selection tool, direct selection tool. I'm going to click on that line, and now I can zoom in here and click on that point, which is a little hard because my text is in front right now. So I'm just going to bring that to the bottom for a second. There, now I can select that and move it to the right. So just the same way as in SketchUp, when you're moving something, you can lock it to move only, you can constrain it to move only in the direction of natural direction, which is already created by holding shift, right? So now I'm holding shift on my keyboard and you see how it's locking it like left and right. So now I can just drag it right there and I have my sofa. So now I have a little label that says sectional sofa and it's pointing to the sectional sofa. And I want you guys to do this for a couple of the major objects on your living room or your bedroom or your bathroom or whatever that is. So rather than starting a new process, I'm going to take what I already did and I'm just going to copy it. So the way you copy something in SketchUp is the same way you would do it, in Illustrator, it's the same you would do it in Word, right? So you can hit Control C on your keyboard and then hit Control V and it'll make another copy and then you can just kind of drag that copy wherever you need it. Or another way you can do it is select the objects, start moving them, and then hit Alt. So you might remember the shortcut from SketchUp, and in SketchUp is you hold Control, but in Illustrator you hold Alt, and you can create a copy of it. So now I basically just have to, I made a copy of it, I just have to change where the arrow is pointing. So I make sure that I'm on the direct selection tool, and I'm going to point the arrow to my TV console. And I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to click into this text box and change all of that to say TV console, right? And what I'm going to do, the last thing that I'm going to do is create a little section. So whenever you're cutting through something in an architectural section, so let me show you guys back to that image. Whenever you're cutting through something, we like to fill it or poche it. So that kind of shows you as a viewer that you're cutting through something. And typically in architectural drawings, that's like a thick black fill, right? So in this drawing, I did a little bit more subtle because I didn't want it to be so obvious. But what I did is like any wall that is being cut, so example, all these edges, you can kind of imagine that they're being sliced, right? Because there's like a ceiling in there and all this other object. I poche'd it or filled it with like a gray color. So that's the last thing that I want you guys to do. And we're going to use the same strategy that we just learned how to do that. So for now, I'm going to unlock that layer. I'm going to hide this guy. So I'm going to go to Object, Hide, Selection. And I'm just going to take my pen tool again. And this time I'm going to do a fill all around the walls. So I'm going to do this really quickly just so I can show you. But essentially, I'm just going to pick my starting point and I'm going to go all the way around on the edges. And I'm going to make sure that I grab everything that's a wall that's being cut. So now I'm going to turn around and go the other way on the inside. So from here to here, from here to here, from here to here, and finally there. And now basically what we're going to do is we're going to flip it. Instead of being a stroke, I want it to be a fill. So I want the fill to go on this guy. So I can just click on this little icon that says swap fill and stroke. So check it out. See, so now I filled it. And I just want to change the color of that to like a yellow, a bright yellow. And you guys can pick whatever color you want for your sections. I want that color. And so now if I show somebody a diagram, right, it's very clear to them that wherever I have a yellow, I'm cutting through the model, right? And you can kind of tell that I did it a little messy because there's a little bit of like, unevenness showing here. So if you ever need to come back and fix your anchors, you can use the direct selection tool, click on it, and then drag it out to cover up, to fix whatever you need to fix. And I'm just going to go to Object, Show All, because I hit that pink line. And I'm going to bring that pink line, arrange it bring it to the front. So I know I'm going a little fast right now, but you guys can kind of, watch the video or ask questions if you have any questions. And this looks like a dumb little diagram right now, but what we're going to do is we're going to refine this model and add more detail and add more things as we move on. But for now, this is just a basic introduction to Illustrator. And this is what I want you guys to do over the next couple of weeks to your models as well. So I'm going to work on getting you those Creative Cloud licenses so that you can hopefully install and work on this on your own. So that's the end of my demo. I'll be teaching you guys a few more tips and tricks here and there throughout. But for now, this is the basic setup that we want to get started with. And so does anybody have any questions?
My question would just be, if we put like many where it says sectional sofa, like if we put a lot, can we put instead the picture in the middle and the what's it called? Things on the side.
Like the wall art? Yeah, definitely. I mean, I want everybody's space is different, so I want you guys to pick whatever is most important for you. For now, whatever is most important for you to show, and then we'll have a critique and we'll say like, hey, maybe maybe here instead of calling out the sofa, you should be calling out that wall art or something like that. So yeah, whoever asked that question, sorry, I couldn't see who asked it, but yeah, definitely, call out whatever you want to call it in your picture. And obviously right now you guys don't have the software installed and the licenses, so you can't do anything. But as soon as I work on that and get you guys those, then this will become the next homework assignment, okay? All right, so if nobody else has any other questions, that's the end of my lesson. I don't know if Kevin or Janica had anything else to say or any comments to add before we break out for the evening.
I only have one comment, and it's if you zoom into your image there, the wall next to the TV, I think it's actually not a cut wall because we're not cutting through it, right? That edge right next to, I think that's just the end of the partition, right?
Oh, right. Yeah. That's a good point. So I think, Sarai, you mentioned this, right? This is an opening into another room in your home, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
in that case, yeah, Kevin's completely right. We wouldn't be showing that as a cut. We just kind of leave it alone. So what I'm going to do for that one is I'm going to double click into that object to isolate it. And I'm going to go to the pen tool. And if you hold on the pen tool, there's a delete anchor point tool. And I'm just going to delete these anchor points, these two, right? So it just left those two. And Kevin had a great point. Yeah, it's not cutting through that one. That one is actually the end of a real partition wall. So that's the way we would show this one.
Right, and the only reason I'm saying that is because it does, believe it or not, everything that Ricky has gone over with you in terms of what kind of emphasis you're putting on what kind of lines and how you're cutting it and all of that just helps the viewer or the person who's looking at your creation understand it a little bit more clearly and better. So even though that's a kind of seems like a little, why does it even really matter? If you are, it will help the viewer understand what's getting cut versus, now that wall right there is reading as something that's not cut. It's just the end of the partition or something like that. So
Right.
that's it.
Absolutely. Yeah, so this is the end of that session. Next Friday we're gonna go over Photoshop. So Photoshop is kind of like the opposite of Illustrator. It's raster manipulation. So we'll show you how to create textures and how to edit the actual image. So right now we're using Illustrator to overlay and add like, vectors and diagrams to our image. Next week we'll learn how to actually manipulate the image and create your own textures and add whatever you want to the texture. So right now we're showing like a blue carpet, but if Sarai wanted to, she could actually, either in SketchUp or in Photoshop, she could add a texture to that carpet and make it a different color. So next week we'll go over that. If you have any questions or anything that you wanted me to go over later, you can also email me and we can go over it at another time. Okay. But for now, that's the session. So hopefully you guys found it a little bit interesting, and maybe you'll learn how to use it once you actually get your hands on the software. So I'll work on that. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Enjoy your weekend.
Bye. Thank you.
Yeah. Happy weekend. Thanks.
Be safe out there, guys.
Hey, Ricky, I have questions.
Okay. Yeah. What's up?
You know how we're supposed to cut? Like, are we supposed to? I mean, if we're supposed to cut, that's my question.
Oh, cut the walls?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me go back to this model real quick and show you. Because you probably have all your not that one screen.
Yeah, it's like
You have
like
all your
you
walls
see-
modeled right now, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back. Hold on, let me share my screen. Can you see the SketchUp model?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, so what you're saying is that you probably have your model.
The thing is, I have a restroom on the side of it,
Uh-huh.
but I don't know where to cut it from.
I feel you.
Because, like, all the walls, almost like, every wall except the one in the restroom has a window. And it's going to be weird because it's going to be like a floating window.
Yeah, okay. No, that's a good point. So you have a restroom inside your space, right?
Yeah, on the side of my room.
Okay, let me just kind of model that very, very roughly. I'll do it this way. Let's say that's like your restroom and your cider room. So you're gonna have to pick, and let's just assume that you have everything modeled in the interior, right? Like a bed or whatever else, like couch or whatever you have inside there. So what you're gonna want to do is you're gonna try to figure out what's the best view that you want to show the viewer, right? So do you want to show this corner first, or do you want to show from this corner, or from this corner, or from that corner? So it's gonna be a little bit of a decision, and once you make that decision, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go into your walls and just you're going to have to push one of them down, right?
Yeah.
So what I would do is like, select that that wall that you're going to delete, control copy.
Yeah.
So have it in your clipboard, so copy it before you do this, and then you're going to push it down and then just delete that part, right? So your model is going to end up looking like Sarai's is right now, with two walls kind of like hidden, right?
All right, for sure.
And then you don't want to lose your walls that you had in there. So you just want to, since it's in the clipboard, you just want to go back to paste in place outside of the group and then push that down and then save that as a different group that then you can hide on and off. Make sense?
Yeah.
So since you already have it in there, you can always go in. Well, my SketchUp model is a little, there you go. You can hide it, or like I showed you guys earlier,
You can bring it back.
How do you bring it back?
Yeah, I didn't know about that one.
Yeah. So if you hide it, you can go here and hit unhide all. If you search it, unhide all, and it brings it back. You can also go here to the little visibility display, and you can see the hidden. This is what I was talking about earlier, right? You can see the hidden objects, so you can see, oh, what did I hide? So you see how I can see that thing that I hid earlier, and also the walls that I just hid. So now you can click into it and say unhide.
Oh, all right, sure.
Yeah. You can also put it into a layer, right? So like if you want to create a layer called hidden walls, and then like I said, click on the wall that you want to put in that layer, click on this icon right here, and then on the current tag, change it to hidden walls, And so now if you can control that wall by turning that layer on and off, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how you would do it.
All right. Sounds good. I
Okay.
have another question.
You have another
When
question?
is
Yeah.
it? Yeah. When is it due?
I'm not gonna put a due date right now because I have to give you guys the software. So
Yeah.
once I give you guys the software, you'll have plenty of time. I'll give you guys like a week or a week and a half to finish it up. So no pressure right now. Let me work on getting you guys that software. For now, try to see if you can download that Creative Cloud application. So you can still download it even if you don't have a license to it. And then once you have it installed, I'll give you the license so that you can actually open it. Sounds good?
Or yeah. Sounds good.
So yeah, try to do that at some point, and then email me if you have trouble or if you have it, and then I can even let you borrow my license so you can test it out.
All right. Sounds good, Ricky. Thank you.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Have a good weekend.
I'll talk to you later. Have a good weekend.